So I want to review the Japanese anime called Yamada's First Time, and it's a very controversial anime, especially when you look back at it. And it's about like this girl named Yamada who wants to lose her virginity. So she has like a fantasy of having sex with all the boys in her high school. Like I believe it's like either like I'm remembering it from the years and years ago that I saw. I'm not looking at any episodes now because I'm super busy. But I believe she wants to have sex with like hundreds of men or thousands of men, and what happens is that she eventually meets this guy in her high school, and he's kind of like shy and timid. And over time, they kind of build a relationship, and they try having sex with each other, and they do have sex with each other. But at the very very end, she kind of realizes that she needs to slow down her pace. So there's a lot of things I got to say about this anime. That first of all, it is one of those animes where it's a teenage sex comedy, so definitely very controversial. And I think like even nowadays, we can always ask ourselves, especially in Japanese culture, when you look at the animes like this, is it objectification, or is it in the middle, or is it trying to teach you a message? And I think that most of it is kind of objectification. Like there are panty shots in the opening credits. You kind of see characters with letter grades, and it's kind of a reference to their breast size. But it also teaches a very important message to young women, um, and teenagers in general, that sometimes it's best to wait um, for sex, or sometimes you've never had sex before. So you may have goals in your head, like having sex with 100 people, or just rushing into it, or even just forcing yourself on somebody, or letting somebody force themselves on you, or just doing it just to do it. And the problem with that is that you can always put yourself in a lot of danger, or sometimes you do with somebody who's uncomfortable, and they say nothing about it, and then they kind of say like, I participated, it was consensual, it's okay. Then sometimes there's people who are the same thing. They were okay with it, and then they say that they weren't okay with it, and then that could lead to a rape charge when actually they were consenting. And then there's people who actually force themselves onto people, which turns into sexual assault. And then there's also people who are interested in doing it, then they have sex with somebody, and they're not ready for it, and they want to change their mind because they were interested, and then the sex happens, and then it wasn't consensual. So you should never force yourself into sex, just for a an act of valor type of thing. And also too, you got to make sure you get to know people before you have sex with them, because it could be a disaster at the end. I know, like in college, there was like two times that I've had flings with people, and I think like the thing that they kind of wanted, if they were to do it again, was just to get to know me a little bit more. And I kind of wanted the same thing, because I remember like there was this girl that I just dated for a weekend, and she was kind of like really like enthusiastic about just having something after she and her boyfriend kind of split for a couple of years. And then she was kind of like, well, I wish I got to know you, because it's a big step. And it's not that I did anything wrong. It was just more like, what, this is really new for me to just hook up with somebody that I only talked to for a few days. And that happened in another situation that I was with. I mean, that happened on another date that I had. And I think even in my situation too, I was kind of more like, what? Well, I was more into like the sex part of it, and just having it. But I kind of think as I got older, I want to get to know somebody a little bit more. I want to get to know a female a little bit more, because again, like you said, like I've said many times, that sometimes, especially nowadays, you gotta be super careful with dating, because if people just like have hookups or one night stands and don't really get to know somebody, you can meet somebody who is sane or crazy, or you meet somebody who's sane and then just says, what, I feel so bad about it, and then you may get feelings for that person, then you kind of feel let down, they don't want anything else to continue, or the other person just changes their mind and says, what, even though it was consensual, I'm going to change my perspective on it, because I was just disappointed, because I wish I didn't do that with my body. So you got to be careful. And I also just think that they're both in high school. And I remember like there's like this high school, I think it was like the Cherry Blossom Festival they go to at the end of the anime, or like there's like this festival in high school that they're with. So it's kind of interesting like how they had the free time to have sex with each other, and all that. Because sometimes in high school trips, like sometimes they're kind of set up where kids get a lot of free time in their senior year, so they can kind of, have they can hang out with friends, and sometimes, without this happening, without hoping that this happening, things like this happen. So it is kind of like, we got to be a little bit more careful, especially when we have like these types of trips that allow kids to be more liberal, and not have a lot of like supervision, because again, as I've learned, that sometimes you don't want sex to happen because you don't know if how people are going to react afterwards. It can be consensual with people not saying it's consensual. Not that that has happened to me, but I've known that's happened to a few other people. And then sometimes the school will get sued because you can have and I've seen examples like this. Like, I was down the laundromat a few years ago, and there were two high schoolers having sex in the in the bathroom, and they got caught, and the police got called and whatever, and they did that again and again, and they kept getting caught and called. But one of the reasons why they had to call the police was just because, like, of this thing nowadays where if you're a female, you can easily lie about being raped, or saying like, well, the business was open early hours, so therefore nobody was around to kind of stop it from happening. There's so much spinning that happens to people, where a woman can kind of flip it on a guy, but there's also a situation where a guy can flip it on a guy, or a gay guy can flip it on a gay guy, or a lesbian can flip it on a lesbian. It's not just women have the power. I know that's a stereotype, but that's kind of something you see a lot in the U.S. So I do think that this anime is also kind of, I think, important in the sense that, and in a sexual comedy way, is also a message about what happens when you objectify yourself, what happens when you're so naive about sex, and what happens when you're a virgin and you're super naive to a point where you are not being accountable, and you want something that you think you want, and then you may end up really, really disappointed, and then you have to know how to process it. And sometimes when you are pursuing sex, it can just turn out as, I tried it out once, it wasn't so special, and I move on with my life. And sometimes, as I said, it could be that same feeling, but people lie about consensuality, or sometimes consensuality is thrown out the window, and then you're forced to participate because the other person's horny and bigger and stronger. So sex should never be a goal for anybody, I feel, because I think usually when you do, you blow it out of proportion and you make it overrated, and sometimes you can just be unbeknownst to you until it happens, putting yourself in a form of danger. So that's kind of my themes and messages of Gata HK Yamada's first time.